Okay, so I wanted to talk about the difference between good and great players. And it's interesting because, I mean, there's many levels of bad players, there's many levels of good players, and many levels of great players. But there's a distinctive difference between what I think good players and great players do. Now, good players, in my opinion, are able to play fundamental ABC poker. They're able to, you know, narrow their range and so on and so forth. They're able to extract value and do all these things that are just fundamental ABC poker, right? And they're good at issuing restraint and not, you know, not going crazy at the table and dealing with all these fundamental things that you need to be good at, like 1-2 or 2-4 or whatever, 2-5, 5-5, anything. Great players don't really focus on cards, but great players focus on situations. So great players are different because great players exploit way more than good players. And great players exploit in the right times that are profitable over the long run. So you'll see really bad players try to exploit, but they're exploiting or bluffing or trying to make steals that'll never work. The difference between bad players and great players is great players do it. And it may not work right then and there, but over the long run, they know that that play that they make will work. So the example is like, you know, if I sit down with one of my, you know, players who played straight up, you know, basic ABC poker at a 1-2 table, they'll do good, they'll win, they'll have a good hourly rate. But if I were to sit down next to them and play up with them, I'd have the same hourly rate as them, but then plus a little bit on top because of all the little slick things that I do. So I'll be noticing at the table that maybe the player, you know, maybe the player in the one seat is the kind of player who likes to see every single flop, and if they hit, they stay in, and if they don't, they leave. So this is the kind of player that I'm constantly in pots with, trying to, you know, I can take the pot down like 80% of the time, and if they don't, if they, you know, they stick around, they probably have something. It's simple things like that that you're looking for. Or things where it's like, you know, it's a limp call, and you know that raising there is going to take down, is going to get everybody to fold like 90% of the time because the players just limp so often, they limp fold so often, you know that play to be profitable. So you take that perspective, and you raise. That's what you got to do. You got to really exploit. Like, poker is all about exploitation, but the problem is people try to, great players are going to exploit when they know that's profitable over the long run. Where good players are going to not really exploit that much, and shitty players are going to exploit in the wrong spot. So they're not being exploiting, they're usually exploited. They're not exploiting anyone, they're usually being exploited themselves. It's very, very interesting how, you know, the different dynamic between that. And usually you see growth. So usually, what usually happens is players come in, they have no idea what the hell they're doing, right? So they're you know, raising, they're bluffing, it's all terrible. And then they get to good fundamental ABC poker. And once that's their foundation, you know, fundamental poker is their foundation, then they can step away from it from time to time and exploit players. All right, and it's a really delicate, gradual balance and a good gradual process. And the good thing to do is really think about where you are along this scale. Like, you know, are you the kind of player who's saying, you know, I think this play is exploitable over the long run. You know, I'm going to go all in this spot because I think that my opponent folds 70 or 80% of the time. And if they have aces here, so be it. But most of the time they don't. And most of the time I pick up this pot and I know this play is plus EV and blah, 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 blah. If that's you, you know, it's a good thing. I mean, if you're just like, raise, you know, river, raise, all in, I hope he folds, you're a bad player probably. All right, so it usually, for the most part, people gravitate. You don't see that many great players. Most players gravitate between good and bad. They're in the middle right there. And bringing them to good is pretty easy, but bringing them to great takes a lot more time. So that's why you'll see a lot more, and really great boils down to being more exploitive on post-flop. Everybody's pretty decent pre-flop, everybody's good in the flop. Most of the money is made in my game from taking players to the turn or river and then exploiting them. That's where most of your money is going to come from. Yeah, so I mean, and post-flop experience comes from experience. I mean, post-flop skills comes from a lot of experience. So it's one of the things you see in players who've been playing for a long time and thinking about the game for a long time will have a lot better post-flop skills, which is very, very important. And I'll get into that into another video. So just ask yourself really honestly, like, where are you? There's no shame in it. Like, you know, as long as you figure out where you are, you can get better.